So thanks for coming to my presentation today. I am Sarah Hollis. I'm a part of Troop 1207. I just graduated from high school. And so today I'm going to explain to you guys about how Wyoming's government works, Wyoming's role in the federal government, how to register to vote in Wyoming, and then I'm going to talk about how to get involved in Wyoming's government and why it's important to do so. And I'm going to end with any questions that you guys have for me. So Wyoming's legislature is the body of the government that takes bills and passes them into law with the governor's signature. So Wyoming has something that is called a part-time legislature. And basically what that means is, instead of the legislature meeting all year, like United States Congress does, the Wyoming legislature just meets for a short period of time each year and does all of their business in that time. So Wyoming has two chambers in their legislature, the House and the Senate. The House has 60 members and the Senate has 30. There's slightly different rules in the House and the Senate, but in terms of like the average person in Wyoming, it doesn't really matter all that much. Both chambers need to approve the bill in order for the bill to be signed into law. House representatives serve a term of 2 years, while senators serve a term of 4 years. So we elect House representatives every election cycle, and we elect senators every other election cycle. And then in the House and the Senate, there are leadership teams. In the Senate, there is the president, vice president, and majority floor leader, those are positions held by the majority party or the party with the most members. The minority party also has leadership. The minority party is the party with the least amount of members. And so in the Senate, that is the minority floor leader, minority whip, and minority caucus chairman. In the House, majority party holds the House Speaker, Speaker Pro Tem, majority floor leader, and majority whip. And the minority party has the minority floor leader, minority whip, and minority caucus chairman. The leadership in Wyoming's legislature decides what comes up for vote and when it comes up. So this is decided by the majority parties with input from the minority parties. There are two different kinds of sessions in the Wyoming legislature. There are odd years, which are general sessions. The legislature meets for 40 days in those sessions, and they go over all bills during that. So that's when the legislature gets most of their business done. In an even year, that is when the legislature does a budget session. In that case, they will meet for 20 days, and their main focus is the budget of Wyoming. If they do want to bring up other business to do on the floor, all other bills will require a 2/3 vote by the legislature to be brought onto the floor for consideration. The next branch of Wyoming's government is the Judicial Branch, and this is the court system of Wyoming, which, unless you're a lawyer or a judge, you want to spend as little time in as possible. There are several different levels of the court system. The lowest level is the municipal courts. Municipal courts cover damages up to $750 and ordinance violations, but they only have civil jurisdiction. The municipal will set the term for the judges, and in most cases, judges on the municipal courts only work as a part-time job. The next level is the circuit court. The circuit courts cover everything up to $50,000 in damages. They also deal in family violence, stalking, forcible entry, and detainer cases, and they hear all misdemeanors. Circuit court judges are appointed by the governor of Wyoming in a similar manner to the Supreme Court justices, and I will explain that process in a minute. And circuit court judges serve 4-year terms. The next level is district courts. They have general jurisdiction in the state. The district judges preside over felony, criminal, and civil cases, as well as juvenile and probate matters. Probate matters is when the courts decide whether a will is valid or invalid. They hear appeals from lower courts. The jurisdiction of the district courts is unlimited, except for civil cases under $50,000, small claims cases, and misdemeanors, which are the responsibility of the circuit courts. As a result, the work of the district court judges include the most serious cases and controversies in the state. There are 23 district judges in the state, organized into 9 judicial districts. District court is held in each county seat, so that some judges must travel to all counties within their district to hear the cases which arise there. In addition, district judges will travel to other districts when necessary to assist other judges with their caseload. District judges are chosen like justices of the Supreme Court and judges of the district court. In this case, district court judges serve 6-year terms. Lastly, there is the Supreme Court of Wyoming, and is the highest court in Wyoming. And because of that, it is the last stop for all cases that involve Wyoming law. For cases that involve federal law, the case can still be moved up to the United States Supreme Court. Since the Supreme Court of Wyoming is the last stop for Wyoming law, the court can do several different things. Sometimes decisions follow previous cases or current statutes. Sometimes there's not an exact statute, and the court has to interpret or extend other decisions. On occasion, the court will reject a previous decision and apply a new rule of law. The court can also decide that something does not align with the United States or Wyoming Constitution and declare it unconstitutional. There are 5 Supreme Court judges. When a vacancy occurs on the Supreme Court, the judge chooses a new justice from a list. 1 year into the term, they are voted for retention on a nonpartisan ballot. If retained, they serve an 8-year term and then seek re-election on a nonpartisan ballot. So circuit court and district court judges are chosen in similar manners to the Supreme Court justices, but they serve different term lengths. The last branch in Wyoming's government is the executive branch. The executive branch enforces the laws passed by the legislature. So the governor is the head of the executive branch, and the governor is elected by the people for a 4-year term. And the governor is limited to 2 terms by the Wyoming Constitution. There are several other elected officials. Together with the governor, we call these the top 5 elected officials in the state. All 5 of these are up for re-election this year. So in addition to the governor, there's the Secretary of State, State Auditor, State Treasurer, and Superintendent of Public Instruction. The governor is the highest elected position, like I mentioned. The governor can veto bills that are passed by the legislature or sign bills into law. In addition, the governor of Wyoming possesses a power called line item veto power. What this means is the governor can veto sections of a bill, but then sign the rest of it into law. So you can get rid of some sections of a bill, but if he likes the rest of it, he can sign the rest of that into law. Other powers that the governor has includes filling vacancies in office. The Secretary of State is second in power, serves a 4-year term, and has many responsibilities such as validating elections. The state auditor protects public money, makes sure it's accounted for and being used in the most efficient manner. The state treasurer invests the state's money. The superintendent of public instruction supervises the public education system in Wyoming. All are very important jobs, and like I said, all 5 of these positions are up for re-election this year. In addition to these elected officials, there are many state agencies that are part of the executive branch. I could not possibly list all of these because there is a very, very, very long list. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of these. The Department of Health makes sure that the healthcare needs of citizens of Wyoming are being met. The Department of Family Services protects the safety, well-being, and self-sufficiency of Wyoming family. You are probably familiar with the Department of Transportation, which deals in driver's license and takes care of the state roads in Wyoming. The Department of Workforce Services distributes unemployment and helps people to touch up resumes or practice for interviews for potential jobs. There are many agencies that impact our life. Like I said, these are only a select few, and I could not mention all of them, but I will give you guys a link to all of them later, and that link is also in the pamphlet that's on that back table over there. The policies of the agencies are often directed by the governor or by the state legislature. Wyoming also has a role in the federal government. In Congress, Wyoming has a total of 3 seats, 1 in the House of Representatives, 2 in the Senate. In the House of Representatives, there are 435 voting members. Wyoming has 1 of those, and they determine how many representatives each state gets based on population of the census every 10 years. So in 2020, there'll be another census where they'll redistribute how many representatives each state gets. Wyoming is unlikely in the near future to gain any more than the current one we already have. In addition to the House of Representatives, there are 2 senators. Each state is guaranteed 2 senators, so there's a total of 100 who all vote. Representatives serve 2-year terms, so we're voting for our representative this year in the election. Senators serve 6-year terms. In this case, we happen to have one of our senators up for re-election this year. So the Congress people vote on federal bills and represent Wyoming's place in our federal government. In addition, the number of seats a state has in Congress determines how many electoral votes a state gets. So in this case, Wyoming has 3 electoral votes. There are 6 other states that only have 3 electoral votes. All the rest of the states have more than that. The electoral votes are important because the President of the United States is not elected by the popular vote. Instead, they're elected by the Electoral College. So every state has so many electoral votes. Most states, with the exception of 2, just give all of their electoral votes to whoever wins the state. So we've talked about Wyoming's federal or state government. We've talked about what role Wyoming plays in our federal government. Finally, there is city and county governments. So all are run in similar manners. Each city will have a city council, and each county has county commissioners. In this case, Laramie has 3 wards in our city council, and there are 3 representatives each. The representatives for our city council serve 4-year terms. From there, the city council will elect one of its members to be the mayor and the vice mayor, and they will also hire a city manager, and a city manager is in charge of the day-to-day responsibilities of the city. The county commissioners act as a legislative and executive bodies. They create and enact ordinances. In this case, Albany County has 3 county commissioners. And then there are also several other elected officials at the county level. So there is the sheriff, the county attorney, the county clerk who provided the voter registration and information table here today. And most of those positions are up for re-election this year. So, to vote in Wyoming, it's pretty simple to register to vote. There are 3 different ways. You can register in person at the courthouse. You can go to a registration table that the county clerk provides, like we had here today, or you can register by mail. So there's a form online that you print out, you fill it out, you send it into the courthouse, and that's how you get registered. Or Wyoming has something called same-day registration, so you can go to your polling place and register to vote there, and then go vote. Other states will have the ability to register to vote at the DMV. So if you ever move and decide to register to vote there, in most states you can register at the DMV. This is called the motor voter law. It's a national law. However, Wyoming is one of the states that is exempt from the motor voter law because Wyoming does have same-day registration. To register to vote, one person simply needs a valid Wyoming driver's license or the last 4 of their social security number. There is a deadline to register to vote before an election unless you are registering on the day. In this case, the primary is on the 6th you have to have been registered by. I'm not sure what the deadline is for the general election, but you always have the ability to go register on election day in person. So, future election dates. 2018 is a midterm election. What this means, it's the middle of the president's term while there's an election happening. Midterm elections are very important in Wyoming because this is when we elect our top 5 elected officials, and many other positions. For example, Albany has a lot of its county positions up, including county commissioner. We have some of our city council members up for re-election. So it's very important to go vote in this election, even though it's not a presidential election and doesn't necessarily receive the same kind of attention that you do in presidential years. The primary election is August 21st. Primary elections are used to consolidate the field for the general election. So instead of having 20 people running for governor in our general election, you will consolidate down to 1 person from each party and whatever third parties end up on the ballot that year. So in the primary election, you vote within whatever party you were registered with, whether it's Republican or Democrat. If you are an independent, you can vote on the nonpartisan ballot. Mostly that is Laramie City Council, and there's like the 6th penny tax or something this year. Independents also have the option of changing what party they're registered with, and then they can register or they can vote with that party. It's important to vote in primary elections because if there's somebody that you like in the primary and you don't go vote for them, they may not be there for you to vote for in the general election. Primary dates are also not set nationally, so many other states have had their primaries already. Wyoming is one of the later ones, but it's still not the latest primary date that there is actually. And then there's the general election on November 6th. This is in fact a national date, so everyone goes to the poll on November 6th to vote in their elections. This is when we vote for the best person for every position. There's generally 2 people per party to vote for each position. Sometimes there's only 1. Sometimes you end up with independents on the ballot as well. There are several different ways that you can vote in the state of Wyoming. If you can't make it to your polling place on election day, you can go to the courthouse in advance and vote. In that case, the primary election, you could have started voting on July 6th. And for the general election, you can go to the courthouse and vote on September 21st. If you can't make it to your courthouse, and you can't make it to your polling place, you can request an absentee ballot. That can be done over the phone as well. And then you just fill out where you want them to send a ballot to. You'll fill that out and then you'll mail it back to them and it can be counted. I don't know why that is there. So, one of the important questions, how can you be involved in the state of Wyoming in our government? Well, the most obvious answer is to go vote. However, this is only an option if you're over the age of 18, so it's not an option for everybody in the state of Wyoming, but for those over 18, it is the easiest way to be involved. In addition, you can contact your representatives in office. On Wyoming's legislative website, there is emails and phone numbers for all of the legislators. There's also contact information online for your top 5 elected officials, for pretty much everybody that you vote for, including city council. So you can contact your representatives, tell them how you feel about things, talk to them about ways they're voting, why they're doing that. If you're in Cheyenne during the legislative session, you can go and observe and watch the legislature, and you can fill out a little card thing that you can go send to somebody, to send to one of the legislators, and from there, you just tell them who you are, what you want to talk to them about, and when they have a few minutes, they'll come out and speak with you on that issue in person. The next way you can be involved is to run for office. Obviously, this is a very good way to involve yourself in Wyoming's government because now you're part of it. Now you get to bring your views to the floor, you get to bring your constituents' views to the floor. You can also volunteer for other people's campaigns. This isn't an option all the time because Wyoming only does elections every other year and there's special elections. So campaigning only happens for a few months out of the year. But you can go help other people's elections because they always need people to run the phone banks, go door to door, put data into databases for them. If you want to help in people's campaigns, but it's not a campaign season, you can volunteer for the Republican or Democrat Party. They will have stuff to do all year, including contacting the people who are currently in office, talking to them about things, or encouraging other people to run in future elections. One more thing that I have that I'd actually put on here, but protesting can often be an effective way to involve yourself in government. By protesting, government will hear people's views in a large quantity, and sometimes they will use this to enact change. They don't always use protesting to do anything, but your government doesn't always necessarily listen to your view anyway, because there are so many people that they have to represent. So, why is it important to be involved in government? Government decides things like how fast you can drive on the highway or how much funding your school gets. They make these decisions on your behalf because it doesn't make sense for everyone to go and vote on every single issue that comes up every year, because there's a lot of stuff that happens that you just can't have everyone go to the polls constantly, because that would never make much sense. You can sit on Facebook all day and comment on news articles, but I promise you, your representatives are not cyber-stalking your Facebook page to see what you're commenting on. You have to actually talk to them. Find what you're passionate about, whether it's immigration or healthcare, and use that as the branch to getting involved in the rest of government. In the United States, voting is one of the rights that you're given. It's not mandatory in the United States to go voting, to go to the polls and vote, in a lot of countries it is something that is required of citizens, but it's not in the US. But that doesn't mean that you should not go and vote anyway. Voting is one of the most important ways that you can be involved. For young people who want to get involved, representatives are oftentimes older than you, and so they're not going to be around as long, so they don't necessarily have the same stake in the future of this state or this county or this country that you do, because you're still going to be here for long after these people are gone. I started getting involved a couple years ago when I went on a trip to the Wyoming legislature to talk to representatives about an anti-discrimination policy that had been brought up to the floor. My involvement was further inspired by my AP government teacher, Ms. Todd, and my involvement in Girls State, where we were taught a lot about how government works, and we did a mock government ourselves. I think that a lot of people are involved in government because they don't understand how Wyoming's government operates, they don't understand how they can be involved, and why their views can matter. I hope that it's something that you guys might understand a little bit better now, and you might become a little bit more involved later. It's especially important, or it's really easy to be involved in Wyoming too, because of Wyoming's part-time legislature. So your representatives are people that are in your community, they're lawyers, they're teachers, and they're in your community the rest of the year, they're accessible to you. And the such little population that the state has, your voice as a constituent is a little stronger than it would be in, say, California. So here are all of Albany County state representatives. These are all of the House members that we have and all of our senators. So while these aren't everyone that you go vote for every year, all of these people would be willing to listen to your views if you ever did want to speak with them. So like I said, I have some additional resources that I want to talk to you guys about. The first one is Wyoming Legislators, the Wyoming Legislature's website. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with that because their website's actually really cool. The next one is the website for the court system. So it explains a little bit more about each individual court type, like the judges, the justices, different rulings and opinions that the courts have ruled upon, and their schedule for court cases too. This is a list to the executive branch agencies. So it's basically like a portal to a bunch of information. There's the links to the top 5 elected officials websites, and there's links to all of the executive agencies websites as well. Finally, this is the link to the Secretary of State's website. This is how you register to vote. It explains how you need to do it, what you need to do, and there's forms to print out as well. So the legislative's website is something I find really cool. So when you go first hop on, there is some highlighted information. So the capital work, or interim committees, what they're doing. If you scroll down, there's some more information. So there is calendars, so when the session is, what people are doing in the meantime, previous sessions calendars. There's links to all the committees, which I didn't really touch upon today, but you can find more information on that here. The next one is my favorite part, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well, but this is where you can view all of the previous bills, and soon they will start putting the next session's bills online as well, so you can start looking through those if you want. Finally, there is a list of all the senators and representatives, and you can even find what representatives that you have. So you go on here, there's lists all of the senators. So here is a bio about them, their email, their phone, what districts and counties they are, and their parties. And the same thing with representatives. You go and find my legislator. There's a couple different things. There's a roster of all the senators and representatives. There's who's the leadership, who's in what committees. There's even a seating chart, so if you go hang out with the legislator and you want to see who's sitting on what desk, there's that. And then there are maps of the Senate and House districts, but this is the easy way to find who your representatives are. So if you click on this link, it'll take a minute to load. It's not formatted particularly well, but they're trying. So you can click find your district, input your address, and then you can find what House district or Senate district you are. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about my favorite part of this website. I went too far. We're gonna load now. And it's the section that talks about bills. So these were all of the bills for 2018. Still loading. I'm going to explain what it's going to be like. So it's going to list all of the bills that were introduced. So some of these bills weren't talked about in the session. A lot of them never made it out of their committees or onto the floor. And so it'll list the bill number, what its catch title is. So it's basically something like Wyoming budget, and explains very briefly what the bill actually is. It explains who sponsored the bill. So each bill needs sponsors, usually one representative and one senator, and that will be the person who talks about it. And then the last action, so what happened with the bill last. So these are many of the bills that came before the legislature this year. So if you just click on one, I clicked on House Bill 132. So you can read what the text is, and so you can read what the bill is. You can look at its status. So in this case, it got a bill number assigned, they received the bill for introduction, and it failed. So it never made any progress past that. You can read any amendments that they might have, because this failed, it didn't really have anything. Fiscal notes on what the votes were. So it failed its introduction by a voice or head count. So in this case, it doesn't actually list who voted, but depending on what kind of vote you ended up with, some of these will have how each representative voted on them. So I'm gonna see if I can find this one, because the governor signed into law, so this will have more information. So amendments, still don't have any of those, but in this case, votes wasn't actually more detailed, but and then you can even find this here we go, status. So here you can see that there was a lot more for what happened. It was received into the House, received into the Senate, and finally it was signed into law by the governor. So I find this really useful because if you're not in Cheyenne during the legislative session, you can track what the legislature is doing on this website. It updates in almost real time. I was at the legislature last year following along on this website, and it updated really quickly as to what they were actually doing. So it's not like at the end of the session they put all of this online. They update it as it goes, so people in the state of Wyoming can keep track of stuff. So if you live in Jackson or something and you can't get to Cheyenne, it still gives you an idea of what your representatives are doing, what the legislature is doing, and it gives you a little bit more information that you might contact your representatives with. So I find this really useful during the session, because even though newspapers might talk about things, they're not going to talk about everything, and this way you can actually read what the papers are talking about and kind of formulate your views for yourself that way. So that was the website. So thanks to everyone who helped. I got donations from Laramie Kiwanis Club, Rotary Club of Laramie, Modern Printing, and I wanted special thanks to Kathy Connolly, who was at all my other presentations but has to have a root canal today, so she's not here, but she was my advisor for my project, so special shout out to her. Are there any questions?
What is a minority caucus and what's a minority whip?
So minority whip is basically a person, or minority or majority. That's the person who kind of whips their party into line, so they make sure that their representatives are voting along party lines. Minority caucus chairman, the minority party will caucus at lunch and talk about their strategy or whatever, and the caucus chairman is just the person in charge of the caucus.
So I had the really fortunate opportunity to actually review your proposal for your goal to work, so it's really cool to come and see how it all turned out. And first, I'm blown away because I personally, I'm 23. I wasn't until recently I even started paying attention to politics. So the fact that you're right out of high school and you just gave this phenomenal presentation, it just blows my mind. And it's something that I wish everybody had an opportunity to do, during high school, just to know all this. And so I think just because of the position I was in, where I got to kind of see it from the beginning with your proposal to now, you know what, now that you're done with this, what are you going to do and continue making sure that everybody learns about?
So I'm going off to college in Michigan, so I will not be here most of the time. But
Congratulations.
thank you. I plan on trying to share my materials with other groups, so like the American Legion, who might use some of this stuff at their events like Girls and Boys State. I want to share it with the League of Women Voters, who does a lot of these types of activities as well. The Republican and Democrat parties, who might be trying to do this stuff, or even other Girl Scout troops in the state of Montana and Wyoming, who might want to use some of these materials to try and talk to their girls about how they can get involved. And then I'm also sharing these brochures in different areas. So I asked them to be put out at the public library. I'm going to get some at the rec center, and I'm going to see what other areas that I can get these put out as well. Oh, I've also been putting all these videos on YouTube for people to see.
Yes, great.
So far no one's viewed them, but it's the option. Yes.
So I think when I just registered this afternoon, the application said unaffiliated versus independent.
Okay.
And maybe it said independent, and I just didn't see that, and I just checked unaffiliated because I technically am. So do you know if there's a difference between unaffiliated and independent?
I don't think there's a particular difference. It's usually just wording. So independent and unaffiliated are often used interchangeably for just someone who is not aligned themselves with the party. Anything else? Well, thank you guys for coming today. My biggest audience.